Serious, what is the scariest thing that has happened to you in / near the woods? When I was a police cadet in the Square Quebec's provincial police, the cop who I was with got a radio from an officer patrolling around a sewage facility that was near a forest hotspot for teens thinking that they are Satanists to do their little ritual in the storm drain sewage pipes, asking for backup. When we arrived to the scene, no one was there, and the police car had all of its windows shattered, but no sign of the officer. After getting search and rescue, we searched all night for him until we found him unconscious in the woods. He told us that, after making the call, something hit him in the back of the head, and he blacked out. If you are hit in the back of the head hard enough to black out, something broke. That officer definitely has some brain damage. I don't know what happened to him after, but he retired. Oh frackin' course he retired. Good for him. I hope he only ever uses the fluffiest of pillows for his retired noggin. Did he say he was only 2 days away from retirement before? Was camping in the mountains with friends. It was dark, and we had a campfire going. Heard a scream from around the road. Sounded like a woman. We all freaked out. The scream happened again but closer. One girl, terrified, started crying. Rest of us armed ourselves. We could hear something walking up the gravel road. It was near. I ran to the car, flipped on the headlights. A goat trotted by. Be in the middle of the Australian bush, at least 50 km from any civilization or human. I'm hunting with my brother and we are startled by what seems to be a perfectly clean and unused oven. Just sitting there, no dust, nothing. It even still had warranty tags hanging off it and everything. We just continued on our way feeling confused and weirded out. Ice oven, transported here from another world. That time I was reincarnated as an oven. Probably a nervous shapper shifter who panicked and the first thing he could think of was an oven. If Pro 2017 taught me anything, it's that they were still in danger. I don't know if this counts, but a few years ago I was diagnosed with psychotic depression, and I guess the scariest thing that happened to me in the woods was suddenly finding myself in the woods. I had a major psychotic episode one night before I was diagnosed and found myself deep in the woods. I live in a pretty forested area with no shoes on and no idea where I was or how I got there. No phone or flashlight either. I can't describe the fear and confusion of just suddenly being somewhere. Hope you're doing alright, man. I have it myself, and psychotic depression is horrible. Thank you. Been doing much better with meds and the help I need. Hope you have access to the same things. Cheers to recovery. A not so funny story. When we were like 10 we biked around the neighborhood and decided to go on the side of the highway, very low traffic country highway, and found a body someone dumped in a bag. Never opened it, but was a missing person in with some drug related crime people. You're a Stephen King character, aren't you? Was riding on a trail when a guy on a BMX suddenly came out of nowhere. I had not heard him, neither had the horse. So of course the horse spooked. Really got scared there, since it wasn't my horse. During my time in America I wandered into the woods with my family and we happened upon a grizzly bear. It was luckily asleep, so we backed away from it and decided against walking in the woods for the rest of our vacation. Where were you? There are a lot of bears in the US, but the vast majority are black bears. Brown bears are far less common, and grizzlies fairly rare in most of the country. To be perfectly clear, a black bear isn't actually always black, and a grizzly is technically a subspecies of brown bear, just larger and more robust. Most people encounter black bears, which can still get as big as 600 pounds fairly easily. Yes, I know it's a creepypasta, but I actually totally found a staircase in the woods near Grass Lake in Michigan. It was old and made of wood, just standing on its own. I tried to step on it to see if it was anchored to the ground, and it moved quite a bit, so I don't think it was part of a house or anything. Nothing spooky ever happened after that, sadly. No clue what was up with it. This actually happened to my mum. She was in the bathroom in our local park near the woods and this random guy came into the bathroom. Her and her little sister were in there and the guy was saying, "You owe me money. Where is my money?" Eventually they ran into the woods and thankfully my granddad was there and attacked the man, so they wouldn't hurt my mum and all night. But I always think, if my granddad wasn't there, what could have happened to my mum? Me and dad were camping out near the end of winter because we're mental. Nobody else was around, which we like, because there's no sound in a campsite beside the fire and the people. Then, in the middle of the night, someone screamed in the distance. It sounded close to human, but there was a slight off quality to it that I couldn't place. I was awakened for another half hour while it went on and on. Glad to hear Brown County has a healthy population of skinwalkers. Bobcat, mountain lion, or fox. They all sound like screaming people, especially screaming women. Please don't let this be Brown County, Wisconsin. It wasn't at all scary really. But, while camping in bear country in bear season, something large circled our camp in the middle of the night. Made noise to scare it off maybe. I used to live in way upstate New York, and one time, while my friends and I were playing manhunt in the pitch black woods at 11 p.m. or so, in a blind stupor of running frantically away from the vicious seekers, I tripped over a rock and fell pretty hard. I turned on my flashlight. It's not a good idea unless you want to get found, and to my immediate left was a massive stick that cold sunk right through my stomach. When I say I landed next to it, I mean I was less than an inch away from this thing impaling my 11-year-old body. That was an experience. I went hiking with friends and we hiked too far from where we parked before it was dark. We found a police station where the police officer told us he would give only one of us a ride back to the car. It was my car, so I went. He would only let me sit in the back of the car and started yelling at me when I was having trouble buckling my seatbelt. He thought I was trying to load a gun. Scariest moment of my life, being in the back of a police car with a cop experiencing PTSD. Getting lost while hiking in a nature preserve in 90-degree weather with zero water left and the sun going down. There is forest outside my house, and it was a beautiful day, and I felt like going for a walk. Then midway through the walk I heard crunching behind me, so naturally I looked behind me. There was a hooded black man holding a giant butcher's knife. I bolted out of there, but I couldn't find my way to my house. I hid in the bushes and the guy didn't speak a word until, in a maniac's voice, he screams, "Where the F are you?" He had the deepest voice I've ever heard. And then his heavy breathing faded, but either way I ran as fast as I could the opposite way. I don't know who he was, but I don't ever want to meet him again. Went camping with friends. More drinking than camping. F-king mountain lion shows up. We slept in the cars that night. Worst night ever. A blood-curtailing scream. So loud it made my ears ring. I soon after heard a loud bang. Like a gunshot or a firework. I don't know which. I never ran so fast. Was it like this? Or this? Or like this? Blood-curdling. I was walking through the woods on a path near my stepdad's house, taking some photos. Nothing particular happened, but I remember my heart sinking and getting a really bad feeling, so I turned and started walking back, and soon that turned into a run. Don't know why, but my brain was screaming at me to not stop running, and I have no idea why. Looking back, it may have been paranoia or my anxiety acting up, but it was spooky. Nope, always listen to your instinct. Myself and two friends got lost in a natural cave in the Sierra Nevada mountains. We wandered for hours and eventually we were down to our last few batteries and headlamps. We were only in our teens, and though we had gone spelunking in the past, amateurly of course, we were still terrified of when the light would eventually go out. Obviously we made it out in one piece. Didn't go in a cave or mine for a full year or more after that one. Actually, just thinking about that time is giving me the shivers. Hypothermia with visual hallucinations in a whiteout with 7 kms to the nearest cabin, which I did reach. I guess when I was in my backyard looking into the woods across the highway. The woods start on top of a hill and have a house in them that I could see. The house exploded. I remember my ears ringing and seeing smoke and pieces of wood flying everywhere. I closed my eyes from the smoke, and when I opened them the house was fine, no damage at all. IDK if that sounds cliche, but that was one of the most vivid things that never happened to me. We live in a very wooded area, and this happened like 2 years ago, the first fall I lived here. Woke up to demonic howls at night, leaving me and my boyfriend terrified. Honestly made me tremble a bit. It was so inhuman. Turns out it was the time for the local deer to enter mating season, and that's how they attract mates. 10 times I still jump when I hear it. Dropped acid at a campfire and took a walk with a couple of friends. I laid down to look at the stars trees and they left me. Started on a bad trip, trees were bending down towards me, and the ground was swallowing me up. My friend came back and talked me down. Last time I took acid. Went fishing of the shore and walked through a wide area for like 30 feet. When I got to the site, love, there were 60 plus ticks crawling all over my pants and shirt. Me and my friend was in the forest and we saw a dead bird, and then 10 seconds later we both felt something cold go through us like a ghost. We both freaked out. We had a scouts weekend and there we have some games at night where we are in smaller groups with a map and some checkpoints, so-called checkpoint game. There are also catchers, so you can't be loud or use too much light to look at the map. So we were on our way through some field when suddenly a cow starts charging towards our group. It actually was a mother cow and we were really lucky that she didn't see one tree and ran into it. One of us could have died from that. I found an old purse full of bugs in a tree. Bigfoot encounter serious. I was on a camping trip with my 6th grade class, out on a hike, inspecting bear claw marks on a tree, when this shriek call came from the top of the hill, which was blocked from view by the trees. Suddenly the ranger went funny, kind of worried look on his face. Told us all to sew vertical bar. Then there was a whoosh and a thud, and a huge rock came sliding into view from the top of the hill and through the trees. The ranger told us all to turn around and walk quickly but quietly in the other direction. He said we were late for lunch, but we were only halfway through the trail and had to wait over an hour until lunch was ready after we got back to the site. I was walking in the country near my parents' home one night and 3 boars passed in front of me, like 3 or 4 meters away, without noticing me, or more probably didn't give a FK about me. Still don't know what I would have done if they had decided to charge me. Went glamping for a friend's birthday when we were 12, 13. 4 of us stayed in a yurt, a large tent with a floor. Woke up at 4 AM to giant spider on my bed. We killed it, and I ended up sleeping in a friend's bed. We were 12-year-old girls. I had an option to sleep in a cabin because there was a spare bed. We already had to take out multiple spiders that day, so that should have already been a warning. Yes, I was, and still am, very arachnophobic. I was around 15 riding dirt bikes in the woods with my friend and his dad. We were riding for like 3 hours. When we got to a pretty big field, we drove through the whole field and got to the other side when we saw 2 grown men with swords just fully sprinting at us. We hightailed it pretty quickly and they didn't catch us, thankfully. Nothing happened besides that, but still kinda scary. So I was in summer camp one night. Everything was normal when I wake up and I'm 20 feet away from my tent on the ground. I check my cot and bug netting and see that my sleeping bag and bug netting are undisturbed. My friend and I got lost when we were 9 or so. We were only a few hundred feet behind his house. It's really easy to get lost in densely wooded areas. I have a summer house and right behind it is the woods. One night during midnight I hear human footprints on our deck. Scratch something my dad's car, then run away. I was on the scout boat camp where we had to row 45 kilometers. Now we had started late, so it was already dark. We had been rowing for a couple of hours when we decided to set up camp and start again nice and early the next morning. In the distance we can see land thanks to a big cluster of trees. As we get closer we see that the cluster of trees is more like a floating forest. So we go closer to get a better look. As we get even closer we hear some real creepy screaming noise and see a floating like white light thing. Let me just say, that rowboat turned into a motorboat as we skidded across the water in the other direction. I was out with a dog in some woods not far from where I used to live and saw what at first I took to be a large black dog drinking from a stream. I couldn't see an owner, and as I got closer it slunk away, slunked like a cat. I reckon what I probably saw was the beast of Stroud, not actually in the least bit scary at the time. Thinking about it did make my after dark walks home a little more nervy. I was playing with my friends a few years back in 12, and we saw a bush get trampled, and we saw red hair, and ran. Since this was when it came out we ran into my house onto the balcony, and looked and couldn't see it, but it turned out to be a deer that got shot and bleed out right in front of us. It still haunts me, since I've had a phobia of blood for about 5 years. When I was around 8 or 9 years old I had a friend who we'll call Jay, and Jay liked to take his parents' lighter and light leaves on fire, and we thought it was cool. One day we went to our little spot in the woods, and he did his usual lighting old leaves on fire. but this time we were surrounded by dry leaves and trees, so in a minute the area around us was entirely on fire. We got out, but a good part of the woods was on fire, no serious burns, and we got questioned by police. Good times, good times. I felt in a frozen river and almost died. Saw a tall silhouette looking right at me. Hiking in Grand Teton Park with my brother, summer 2017. I was on a trail that gradually went upwards to this large rock where you could sit down and have a snack. A quarter of the way up, we hear something rustling, and the head of a baby bear pops up a few meters away. Both of us freeze. Then we see the mother bear. At this point, we both enter full-on panic mode and take off down the trail. Running from the bear is the worst thing you could do here, as bears run much faster than you or me and have a chase instinct which is triggered by running. We had read 5+ pamphlets telling us exactly not to do that, but we forgot in the panic. Thankfully, it was a black bear and it didn't chase us. It was still terrifying, though. I was feeling like I was being watched. While I was with my chickens, I turned around and seen a pure black mass duck behind a tree. I checked behind the tree and there was nothing, absolutely no trace. I thought I was going crazy. I stayed inside the rest of the day. My life isn't really that exciting, but I once saw a deer. I've only seen a deer like once or twice, so yeah. My friend thought it was a good idea to ding dong ditch someone at 1 AM. We got caught. It did not help, we were wearing hoodies and sneaking around. Camping back when I was still a kid, and this kid, a friend of mine, yells in the middle of the night, "Mommy help, the ghosts are taking me."